So at this stage in this chapter, we're now going to move on to thinking about the future. This all ties back to the fact that, first of all, when we covered the first lessons in this course, you sat down and thought about the strategic objectives and the reasons why you wanted to go freelancing and what you wanted to achieve from that. Getting to this stage and being more established in freelancing, whether that is in 6 months, whether that's in a year or beyond, you might realise, first of all, that things you went originally into freelance for aren't the things that you want any longer. It may be that they've just modified slightly, or it might be there's just completely different reasons out there. At this stage then, it's always good to really reflect, and to reflect regularly as to whether or not, with what you're doing at the moment, whether that is helping you to get to where you want to be. So for me, as I've mentioned before, the 3 key reasons why I went freelancing were for more money, for greater flexibility, and for more opportunities. And what I realised in doing all of this was that actually I can't necessarily pursue all 3 at exactly the same time. Although I'm earning more money, I was hoping from a flexibility approach that I would have more hours in a given month to just be able to pursue other cool activities. And to be honest, that isn't the case. What you have to realise is that, you know, you're not going to start working towards all of the objectives that you have in an equal and measured way. It might be that you really pursue one because that will simply open up the doors and the opportunities to be able to pursue the other thing. So for me, if I can earn more money, that means I can invest more in other products to develop passive income, for example. That then helps almost automate the money that is coming in so that I do have that more free time and flexibility. So with all of this though, you do have to ask yourself where it is you're going to want to head towards. Now, growth for a lot of people can mean that you want to work with better names or potentially earn more money, or a combination of the two. Or indeed, it can be a case of just keeping things as they are, but making sure that you have a consistent level of business coming in. Now, almost regardless of which reason it may or may not be that you are opting towards as to where you want to go to in the future, it's really important that in the long-term view of what you are doing, that you begin to establish your reputation as an expert in your field. As I've said, whether that is because you want to be the best digital marketing all-rounder, or because you are the expert in a specific industry, a lot of the activities that you're going to be doing around your business really need to help reinforce your skills and expertise so that other people can recommend you. There are different ways to approach this, but the first thing that you can do as a starting point is going out there and trying to find online the other experts in your particular area of digital marketing. Most experts in one form or another are already on Twitter, and because Twitter is so searchable and public, that is a very good place to start. Equally, by just Googling the top lists of top 100 digital marketers, for example, can start to point you in the right direction. But ultimately, again, if you start to see the same names coming up again and again and again, then they are the people that you need to keep an eye on. Now, I don't mean keep an eye on as they are some kind of threat, but keep an eye on them for inspiration. Now, especially on things like Twitter, you can frequently see what people are up to and the type of content they share. That helps you keep your finger on the pulse as to the current trending topics that are going on in your specific area of digital marketing, and also just to understand the different things, the different places they go to, the different conferences and events they speak at. This should help start to formulate a bit of a plan for how, if you really do want to be that expert in that given field, that is potentially one way of getting there. Again, it's almost coming up with a bit of a marketing strategy for yourself. Although if you want to generate business, say through paid advertising, that's great. That's not necessarily going to help in the long-term view of things. So for me, there's been 2 areas which I've been focusing on. The first is content. As I've mentioned in a previous lesson, you do need to be creating content on an ongoing basis. But you also need to be, instead of just sharing like very frequent updates, say about freelance life, it's about sharing content which you create and really establishes you as an expert. Now, that often requires quite a deep dive into a specific industry or a specific aspect of the digital marketing that you do. And it's also a case of coming up with a plan as to how you're going to promote that. There's no point just adding something to your blog and kind of just hoping people will see it. It needs to be shouted about. But the more content in that capacity that you can add, the greater the chances are that when you shout about it, people have something to find. People can see that you're an expert without needing to follow you. It can subsequently hook you into other people who can recommend you onto prospective clients, or subsequently it does mean that eventually journalists will get in touch with you. People will ask for quotes, and you'll start to build up connections with the experts in the industry if you frequently follow and engage with them as to stuff they're doing. That all in all just creates a bit of a positive cycle for getting more eyes on you and for you to be perceived as an expert. So for me personally, as I said, my goal is to create one piece of really good content a quarter that is an in-depth written piece about normally a strategic area of digital marketing, which I add on my blog and then make a point of sharing across all my social media channels. Now, the one I did most recently for the Museum of English Rural Life and looking at their social media strategy went down really well. It got over 1,000 views in the space of a couple of weeks from other social media managers and other people involved in marketing within the museum industry. The fact is there are so many digital marketers out there who look the same as everyone else, particularly in things like social media and content creation. Although it shouldn't be the case, you do need other validations from other businesses and other people in order to establish your reputation. Now, I was recently in contact with a copywriter on Twitter who was complaining about the fact that although he had 15 years experience, every time he quoted his prices, which were naturally higher, most of his clients just turned around and said, no, I'm not paying that. Had a look on his website to see how he presented himself. And what was interesting is the fact that nowhere on his website did he even say he was an expert or indeed how many years of experience he had. Now, at that stage, I then sort of almost cheekily messaged him back saying, look, you do realise if you added this, but it is a case of having the evidence there online to show your expertise and then being able to shout about it. The other potentially faster route, if it is something you feel comfortable with doing, is making an effort to go and speak at different events. Now, within the UK, almost every major town has some kind of digital marketing meetup where a lot of local businesses and a lot of other digital marketers get together and talk things digital. It can be a really good source to essentially be able to distill your ideas and essentially build your confidence in being able to communicate to someone. But again, the promotion that you get off that means that you start to be seen on the speaking circuit. Starting off on those smaller talks and meetups and also act as a springboard to getting into larger events and larger conferences. Subsequently, you then have the experience and the credentials in order to be able to talk at the key digital marketing events. So subsequently, you can then say, I have spoken at this event, I have featured in these places. Now, these need to align to the audiences and the businesses you need to get in front of. So it's not a case that every speaking gig is something that is going to be immediately relevant for you. But it's all these things where subsequently, you can put these features on your website. People can then immediately see you're an expert without needing to speak to you, without needing to see that you can do the work. That correspondingly means you can charge more for your money and work with the type of clients that you really want. Now, in the early days, certainly it's more of a case of taking on any job that's going that you feel might be a good fit, especially if it's just a case of filling cash flow. But at these later stages and planning for the future, in order to be able to take your business to where you want it to get to, you need to work out the stepping stones of how you are going to get there. And being an expert in any given field is going to be a highly effective thing to ensure that you're achieving business success going forwards.